Assistant Secretary David Stilwell, thank you so much for joining us. Now, these AUSMIN talks have come at a very critical time in our region. Why are they so important and what's come out of them?
Well, I think one of the stronger statements from it, you saw the joint press availability, and that was very strong. The written document, it was very lengthy and meaty and just demonstrated a very much shared vision of where the world is and where it needs to go. But I think the strongest statement is the fact that the secretaries and the ministers stood side by side here in DC and were able to meet face to face. These sorts of meetings like we're doing right now, although certainly better than a phone call or none at all, do leave something to be desired. And so the ability to sit down together, break bread over dinner, enjoy some informal time, and then on breaks between sessions, be able to work through some of the maybe trickier aspects of the relationship, that's irreplaceable. And so hats off to Ministers Reynolds and Payne for traveling all the way here and now subjecting themselves to isolation for 2 weeks. Now, what came out of them, you saw the statement, and I think what you saw is a very clear statement of concern for the trends in the region, but also a positive assessment of the improvements in our relationship as we deal with Corona, increasing threats from afar, and the economic issues that are going to result from the pandemic.
Now, you speak fluent Chinese and Korean. You're very familiar with the region. Given the rising tensions with China, how important is our US-Australia alliance to peace and prosperity in the region?
Yeah, you just cannot overstate the importance of seeing the world through a similar framework. And it's not one of might makes right. It's a long-term view. You know, taking an approach that I'm strong and I'm going to force others to do, as I say what I want. I mean, we're seeing that overt censorship where companies are being told to not criticize the PRC. We know that doesn't work. It results in you get short-term outcomes, and you get results that help you in the short term. But if you go back to 2010, and Chinese Minister Yang Jiechi told the entire ASEANs publicly that you are all small countries. China's a big country. It's just a fact. And a threat like that has consequences, and it still echoes today. Whereas the Western approach, and certainly our approach, is one of truly win-win, where if the agreement isn't something that both sides enjoy, not tolerate, but enjoy, it's not going to last.
In June, our Prime Minister announced we'd be buying 200 long-range missiles from the US Navy at a cost of $800 million. How important is this build-up in the defence sector, the procurement, to our own industry resilience and security?
So I have a military background. This one I could talk to you all day about, but I think for your viewers, the most important part of this, in true security terms, interoperability. It's systems that talk to each other, and it's joint training where each side knows exactly what the other is going to do in any given situation at the tactical, operational, and certainly at the strategic level. And so I've got 3 deployments to Australia in F-16s where I got to work very closely with my Australian counterparts. On the joint staff, I work very closely with your military headquarters as well. The Darwin experience has proven extremely fortuitous for both sides. And so it's in terms of equipment, it's in terms of joint experience in the Middle East, Afghanistan, and Iraq, and it's long-term like-minded experience in the military realm. And our vision of the strategic setting in the certainly Southeast Asia and East Asia at large, to include the Indian Ocean, is absolutely aligned, and you see that in the statement coming out of the AUSMINs.
And I guess it's really important to jobs in both our countries as we look to recover.
Absolutely. The joint production is generally, remember these are not military organizations building things. These are civil, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and all the others. And so, but those agreements to share technology and to joint production, which often result from these deals, like you say, increases the technological capabilities of both sides, and they do create jobs and boost the economy.
Now, what about rare earths, or critical minerals as the US calls them, so important in advanced manufacturing? And I understand that 30 kilos of heavy rare earths goes into a joint strike fighter. The only place you can get heavy rare earths at the moment is from a Chinese supplier, and yet the Chinese have now put sanctions on Lockheed Martin. I mean, what sort of a situation does this put the West in?
It leaves us wondering why we didn't take stronger action in 2010 when China embargoed the same critical minerals for Japan after the Senkaku incident. Now, that's not to say I don't think we were sitting on our hands. I'm not being critical. I was not part of that process back then, 10 years ago. But what it does say is this is another chance for two like-minded countries to combine forces and look at supply chain reliability. And this is a great example of that. Obviously, pharmaceuticals is the biggest one right now. That's the most immediate concern. But critical minerals is also one that we cannot afford to leave ourselves open on. And we did talk about that. And again, supply chains writ large during the meetings this week. And if we go ahead.
You mentioned Japan. Japan, in that situation 10 years ago, actually put money into Australian rare earths producer Lynas, which in the last week, with its US partner, has just won a heavy rare earths contract, phase 1 contract from the US Department of Defense to look at design and planning. What does this say about the trust that you guys have in Australia?
I think it speaks to like-minded. I mean, I want to focus on the bilateral relationship here, but we have a great alliance with Japan and Australia in the region. And so those bilateral alliances don't have to be hub and spoke. It doesn't have to be the US, Japan, US, Australia. It can be trilateral. And we're seeing a lot of that trilateral cooperation and even quadrilateral. I mean, we've talked about the Quad as you roll India into this, a far more engaged and capable India. And so we encourage that sort of cooperation between partners as well. So it's not hub and spoke. So it is a strong network.
And what about cyber concerns? We hear about this infodemic coming through with the pandemic, even in terms of stealing ideas for vaccines. What is America doing about this?
Well, first, we're waking up. And the alarm clock was Australia, Prime Minister Turnbull, John Garneau, Clive Hamilton. I point to that every time. Australia was the first to actually sound the alarm bell. We all knew it was happening, but nobody wanted to officially take this on. This quiet, or as Clive Hamilton would say, silent invasion and penetration into everything, not just government functions, but schools, businesses, and all those other things. So as, again, to quote Garneau, the solution is sunlight, right? Just shine some light on this. Transparency. These things cannot survive the light of day. And if we just take the time and look for them, they are readily available. They're very apparent. And if you simply look at how it's being done, you can stop it. And we can go back to, again, this free exchange of ideas without it being either adjusted, twisted, censored, or whatever.
Finally, what are the hopes for this region in the context of the alliance? What can the US and Australia do to grow prosperity in the region?
I would say that decoupling from what has been a rapacious and fairly one-sided PRC is necessary in the short term. And I'm not saying decoupling is necessary in total. I'm just saying we need to take stock of where those interactions are happening, and we need to do that not just with a setup that says it's the U.S. versus China. It's all like-minded against this authoritarian idea of might makes right, and all deals should benefit one versus the others. But once we finish that, once we've made that very clear that there is a better way, and then we ask the PRC to consider that and deal on a true basis of win-win and a level playing field, I mean, that would be the ideal outcome. And I'm not saying we're going to quickly return to where we were. It took 40 years to get in this position. It's going to take a few years to get China to understand that they've got to play by the same rules that we all play by. But that would be a strong outcome, is that strong voices like the US and Australia and everybody else that would like to return to a system, 70 years of stability brought on by our shared military and other efforts to allow free trade and trade that benefits both sides. we set the example in that regard. We need to stay true to our values, and we need to work together on this. This is not, there is a place for the PRC, but they've got to understand the system and be part of it and not upset it.
Assistant Secretary David Stilwell, it's been great to talk with you. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.